This is the fifth and final episode in our series, How a Biased Slavery Narrative Was Weaponized Against Western Civilization. We've examined the global nature of slavery, the weakness and division that made societies vulnerable to it, the fallacy of inherited guilt, and the elite-driven machinery of empire. Now we ask the most urgent question of all. What happens to a civilization, or to a people, when their entire identity is built on victimhood? Episode 5, From Victimhood to Identity, the Narrative Crisis. There is a fundamental difference between remembering suffering and defining yourself through it. In modern Western societies, particularly in media, education, and activism, the identity of certain groups, especially Black communities, is increasingly portrayed as inseparable from historical grievance. The dominant Black narrative in mainstream discourse today often reduces centuries of rich, complex history to a single theme: resistance to white oppression. Slavery, segregation, colonialism, these are indeed part of the story. But when they become the only story, something vital is lost. As John McWhorter writes in Losing the Race, Black identity in America has come to center not on achievement or culture, but on opposition, on a grievance-based self-conception that constrains ambition, innovation, and pride. This is not empowerment. It's paralysis. Africa is home to immense cultural wealth, mythologies, kingdoms, literature, art, music, religion. Yet how often do we see the Yoruba Orishas celebrated in film or literature? Where are the superhero adaptations of Shaka Zulu or Mansa Musa? And where are the animated tales of Queen Nzinga or the epic of Sundiata? Instead, we are given race-swapped versions of European folklore, from Snow Brown to Black Little Mermaid. Symbolic gestures that implicitly say, "You have no mythology of your own, so we'll give you ours." But this approach does more harm than good. It confirms the stereotype that African cultures have no stories worth telling, only pain worth retelling. It suggests that cultural value comes not from internal creativity, but from proximity to Western narratives. Compare this with how Europe treats its past. Our European history is filled with war, famine, genocide, and empire. Yet European identity is not reduced to victimhood. It is built on civilization, on artistic achievement, on intellectual heritage, from Dante to Bach, from Newton to Beethoven. European nations focused on their greatness, not on their failures and defeats, and they tell the story of their tragedies within a broader narrative of rebirth, resilience, and achievement. If African history were treated the same way, we would see a very different picture. We would see a continent of kings, traders, artists. We would see Black excellence not only as resistance, but as creation. But that would mean leaving behind the politics of grievance. In The Coddling of the American Mind, authors Jonathan Haidt and Greg Lukianoff argue that Western academia has shifted from resilience building to trauma narrative programming. Young people are now taught to seek offense, identify as victims, and build identities on historic oppression. This is not unique to race. We see it in gender politics, post-colonial theory, and sexuality. But the impact is most damaging when applied to groups already struggling for self-definition. When victimhood becomes your primary lens, you develop what Douglas Murray calls, in The War on the West, a fragile narcissism. A worldview in which pain becomes currency and grievance becomes status. This leads to a zero-sum moral economy. If one group suffers, another must pay. If one history was brutal, another must be erased. But truth doesn't work that way, and neither does dignity. A true self-respect is not built on resentment. It is built on achievement, memory, pride, and creation. No community can thrive if its children are taught to see themselves as perpetual victims and others as perpetual villains. Instead of demanding that white societies atone forever, we should demand that all peoples reclaim the fullness of their histories, both the dark and the brilliant. Imagine a global Black identity not defined by chains and ships, but by rich folklore, music, art, spirituality. Imagine if instead of protesting Western stories, new African stories were told, funded, and celebrated across the world. That's the future worth building. One in which we remember the past, but are not ruled by it. One in which we reject inherited guilt and grievance in favor of mutual respect. One in which we all become authors of our own story. Thank you for joining us for this 5-part series. If you found this work valuable, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us grow and keeps independent content like this alive. And this series takes a great deal of time, effort, and research. If you'd like to support our work, you can make a donation through our Buy Me a Coffee link in the description. Every contribution helps us keep going. And if you'd like to explore the books and sources we've cited, you'll find affiliate links in the description. Purchasing through those links also helps support our work. Stay curious, stay free, and thank you again